We're going to look today about what's variously called post-processing or editing or optimizing. You hear a lot of people talk about optimizing your photos. I think it's a pretty good word. I think it captures what we're all about. And again, this is not a technical, it's not a technical presentation on how to use Lightroom. It's not a promotion for Lightroom. So I won't be doing compare and contrast to other editing systems. It's really focused on giving you new tools, new awareness of what you can do with your photos if you choose to take advantage of some of the wonderful technology that's out there. So I'm going to demonstrate that it's not only tools, but it's also a process. So editing your photos involves a process. It involves a series of decisions on your part. It involves your awareness of what kind of outcome you would like to have. And it also involves your awareness of the tools that are available for that. And let me say, I'm going to show, I think, demonstrate with 4 different photos. And after each demonstration, I'll stop and be a good time for questions for clarity. Again, I know that one of the strengths of our group is that we have people at all levels and all time frames of being involved with photography. And I think that's a great strength. So one of the kind of rules of the road is to keep all our questions and comments in good old plain English. When we first started, I had a couple of people drop out. They disappeared. And I saw them as like, hey, where'd you go? And they said, oh, there were too many professional photographers in that group. And I thought, no, that wouldn't be it. So when I poked a little more, they said, well, the language. They said, people were using language we didn't even understand, words we didn't know anything about. So that to me is like, oh, okay, word to the wise. Let's just say things in plain English so that we're all privy to it. Things have gotten technical and specialized, but we don't have to. So after each demo will be a time to ask questions. And I know some of you have studied other systems, you own other systems, some of you haven't. Some of you, God bless you, were willing to come, even though you went, well, why would I come to that? I don't have your software. So thanks for showing up anyway. All right, two more thoughts. And this arises for me whenever I watch a demonstration of somebody else showing how to do post-processing. And that is, think about what your relationship is to the way Mother Nature tends to do things if you're doing outdoor photography. My goal has always been to come as close to what Mother Nature has done as possible in terms of the light, the feeling, the sense, the experience of something alive. And I see others who say, well, you know, Mother Nature needs a hand. I'm going to improve on her. And so it's like, okay. So they will use much stronger, high contrast kinds of editing, just all kinds of things. So figure out, and you will as you go through it, because you'll have to make some decisions where you are with that. I encourage a gentle touch, and feel free to play with it. All right, so let's go to share screen. And Adobe Lightroom Classic. There we are.
Ooh, beautiful.
All right, so Rosemary's seeing woman I shared. Everybody's got the sunrise.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Great. Thank you for that. And
uh-oh.
What's up, Bill?
That's a sandpiper, isn't it?
I think so. Again, I'm not a birder. I'm one who takes pictures of birds. So I'll go with what you say, Rosemary. If you tell me it is, I'll say, yep, it is.
I'm
It-
guessing.
It is a sandpiper, but there are many kinds of sandpipers, and I don't quite know which one this is. It's not a yellow legs, I can tell you that. But anyway, that's
Okay.
enough.
All right. Well, it's of the Sanibel Island sandpipers. I can tell you that on your family tree. So I thought I would show you just a bit of a little bit longer process than just, okay, now let's change this. And that is the pictures you take to start with. So here I am in Sanibel. The lighting is entirely different. It's brilliant. There's movement in ways I'm not experienced with, but then I choose to be on the water. The birds come and go fairly quickly. So I'm just shooting away. And pretty quickly I noticed, okay, so we're not going to have monstrous waves here. We're just not going to be a Hawaii picture, right?
That's Western Florida.
Is that where that is?
Yeah, on the coast. That's the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
So, but I kind of liked the movements,
Mm-hmm.
the texture, the fact that it is an oblique line across there. And I thought, okay, that's worth thinking about. But also it's like, oh, it doesn't last very long. So we're always making decisions. And hopefully we are taking note of what we're seeing, even as we snap away and making some decisions about it. So my thought was, okay, let's see if we could get a good clear shot. What I didn't know was a sandpiper with some of the motion in the water. That's what I got. This is straight out of the camera. And I want to say to many of you who are working really hard and doing amazing things just through your camera, there comes a point at which it's really helpful to be able to go beyond what you can capture in a moment just through the camera. So let's take a look. I'm going to use this as a first example. And pretty much for me, I'm going to crop things first. Let's see if we can move. Are you all seeing your pictures on my screen?
That's
Yeah.
one.
Yes,
Yes.
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 Okay, but now you should be able to see the Lightroom desktop, yes?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay, super. So the Lightroom tools are over here on the right, and it's always an issue. I don't know that you'll be able to read it. John, can you actually read what's here or not? Is it too
Barely. I mean, I know Lightroom, so I know what I'm looking for, but I can almost read it.
almost? Okay. I tried, couldn't find any way to make it bigger. So, but I will walk you through it. And feel free to ask questions about it. I need to move our pictures around. Hope, how would I have a stack on the left? Is there a way to do that? Hope Tillman?
I'm not sure what you want to do. I see that you have a picture and then texture, shadows, highlights.
No, I'm asking about everybody's picture here, the Zoom pictures. I'd like to get it out of my way, essentially.
Can you slide from the, I don't know if it works on this, but frequently if you slide to the left from the picture, not from the column.
Betty, there should be a little triangle that you can click on the very end of either screen that should get rid of the menu. Tiny little triangle.
Well, if you go up to where it says Navigator, Fit, Fill, 3.1, and then an arrow,
Wait.
right above there.
Hang on. The problem is, Hope, I'm seeing my Lightroom screen.
Yeah, this is your Lightroom screen, isn't it?
Well,
Okay. So where's Navigator on my Lightroom screen?
Navigator's above the little image that then you see in the middle of the screen.
And it's below the little R in LR, Betty Caldwell.
Yeah, it's the
Over here, thank you.
Yes.
right.
Now what?
I'm just wondering if I see a 3-to-1, and then arrow up and down. I don't know what that gives
Right,
you.
no, I
That-
don't.
That,
That's
Betty,
Yeah.
that actually changes your resolution. If
Right.
you come down further to the left and run your eyes down through the very left side of the screen, you'll see a little triangle. Just kind
Further
of
left.
click that. I think that will make that menu disappear.
There is.
No, that's not, all right, hold on. Let's stop. Let's stop. What I'm looking for is going to be controlled by Zoom, not by Lightroom.
Oh no, that it won't. It will not be controlled by Lightroom, by Zoom.
All right, I think let's try this. I've got you guys moved over to the left. Let's try this and see how it goes. All right, so develop, we go to the develop module, and I go to crop first.
Okay.
Again, there's an order in which you do things. Goodness knows I'm a random thinker, so I'm certainly not rigid about always doing things in the right order. But there is an order. At least know there is one. And it's called the workflow. So first step for me in the workflow is to crop. This is where you get to use everything you've learned about composition, because you're essentially recomposing your photo.
Mhm.
So notice down here, well, we don't need to see a little bit of sand. And basically, what I'm looking for is the sandpiper and the water. So we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to stick with the rule of thirds. Okay. So we're going to position the sandpiper in the power spot, right over the intersection point on the left. Why the left? Well, the bird's looking to the right. So you don't want to cut off the space he's looking into. You have to keep your eye on what you're doing, or you get the sand back. All right, so that's what I'm going to work with. And we go up to tools and crop. And this is what I'm going to work with. That feels good to me. That feels like there's something there. It's much brighter than the light that I'm used to working with. For heaven's sakes, I'm in Florida on a beach with water. So it's going to be bright. And you would think that you would fix that or tame it down with exposure. You would just think that. For the most part, I avoid exposure, and I would encourage you also to avoid it, because it's called a global. It impacts the entire picture. That makes me want to run and get my sunglasses, right? Way too bright. So instead, we get to focus on just that part where the brightness is held. Highlights is a wonderful tool to know about, which is right here. And we're going to take the highlights down. Notice, if you keep your eye on the water, notice the difference as we take highlights down. So they're more visible, they're more formed, they stand out a little bit more. By just taking down highlights. It's a very useful thing to know about. Now, at the same time, we notice, can't quite see the face of the bird. It's subtle, but you kind of wish you could. I do. I kind of like, well, come on here. I want to get some more intensity, more of a pop. So there's the great tool called Shadows deletes only shadows. It's not an exposure kind of thing. And we're going to go to shadows and going to the right. There you go. Cool, huh? Got it? So we took highlights down to deal with the brightness, and we take shadows wonderful tool, in this case, for photos of your friends and family that you can almost see their face, but they've got the shadows under the eyes or whatever. For mountains, for landscapes, where you want to see more of the detail. So we've used highlights and shadows. We want a sense that eye is very, very sharp, though it's pretty sharp. Just going to add a little more black. That's pretty much the only place that black is in this image, is on the bird. So we're going to add a little bit of black. I might even take it back a little bit. And you'll see there's a numerical rating on the right. I don't know how much of that you can see, but it gives you a way to know where you are and to come back to it and do it again. So we've got black at plus 26, a little bit sharper look on the bill, the eyes, and highlights reduced to minus 89, pretty much all the way. Shadows plus 100. The only other piece, I'm always tempted to see what happens if I add a little bit of dehaze. Dehaze was introduced just about a year ago, and it's just magical. So let's see what happens if we do that to a very small amount, then it gives it more of a pop. You can try texture. If you play with texture and add a little bit, you can see more details of the bird. At the same time, I think we're losing some clarity around the face. So I'm going to go back to where I was with the texture and leave it alone. So that's it. That's all I would do with this. So what makes it have some pop is the oblique line running across there, the clarity around this, and the sense that it's sort of a dynamic stance of the sandpiper. All right, so questions, anybody?
Eddie, this is Bill May. Just a comment, that bird's eye is a problem I've been having, and I like the way you handled it. I have a shot I can send you of a I think it's called a kingbird.
Okay.
But yeah, that eye came out. The first thing I looked at on that thing, I thought, I want to
Sure.
see its eye.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Bill. And that's the thing in wildlife photography is always the eye has to be sharp or forget it, right? Tack sharp. But easier said than done. And there are a lot of reasons that things aren't sharp, most of which you probably discovered on your own. It can be from a little handshake on our part. It could be the wind. It could be for the animal moving. But you need to get a hold of that. So here's a nice and easy way to do it.
Betty?
Yeah.
Janet. This is is Lightroom something, is an app that you would download on your computer or your phone? And then do you have to then load your photographs onto it?
Thank you. Great question.
Okay.
I think I just skipped over all that, didn't I? Yeah. Okay. So it's not an app. It's a database. It's more sophisticated and more complex
Okay.
than an app. An app being defined pretty much as a piece of software that mostly does only one thing. Okay. So if you want to reserve a table somewhere, they've got apps that you can reserve your table. It doesn't give you the recipes. This is much more subtle, much more complex. It's an Adobe product. Adobe also does Photoshop, which was their first biggie that they developed. Lightroom is their second and is now the industry standard. So it has two parts to it, essentially, Janet.
Okay.
One is the library part, which is for cataloging your photos.
Okay.
And so that's where you download all your photos. That's where you have keywords so you can find them again. where you can put them in albums, all of that, working with sorting and tagging your photos. Develop module is where you get to do the post-processing.
Okay.
I avoided this like the plague for several years because the artist in me just wants to take photos. Thank you very much. And the technological part of me was a little more shy at that point, and I just didn't want to deal with it. I came to a point though where I had some friends in the photography world. I was looking at what they were doing, and I knew they weren't any smarter or better than I was. But boy, their photos had something mine didn't have. That's when I came to the realization it's like, oh, it's not just the photography, it's the post-processing.
So I'm looking at the top of the screen, and is it, in order to download it, you'd go to Adobe and look for Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic?
On an iPad.
Hang on.
Just an added.
Wait, let me answer the question, okay? And then everybody else can chime in, but it gets a little confusing if everybody answers it. Wait a minute, let me answer Janet's question, and then I'll come back to you. No, you.
This
What?
is Peggy.
Yes. Peggy, did you hear you say I wanted to answer Janet's question? Can you hang on for a second?
Yeah, I was going to offer something to Janet, to her as well, if you will. Just to say that Adobe can be purchased either as an outright, it's rather expensive, or you can subscribe to it and pay a monthly fee and get access to several programs actually.
Okay, so
Okay.
to answer Janet's question, you would just look up Lightroom. You don't need to go through the Adobe Photoshop, Just look up Lightroom. There are several versions of it. I would be happy to talk with you about that if you choose to pursue it to help kind of guide
Okay,
that process.
that's great. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And it also comes as a freebie on your iPhone.
Oh,
So as an app, interestingly.
okay.
Maybe a year ago, they introduced that, and it has the same slider-based technology, so it's easy to use. It's not the same, and so I wish I could say, try that out. If you like it, you'll know you like Lightroom. It's not really true, but it's not bad. So that's another way to do it. Somebody
Okay.
said iPad, Hope, yeah.
The iPad version, I believe, is also free. And while it's not Lightroom Classic, it's not the Lightroom that you're using on your computer.
Right.
It's a kind of neat tool.
Yeah, it's the same. I guess it's the same tool for your phone or your iPad.
What's it called on iPad?
It's called Lightroom, LR,
Okay.
but Lightroom.
Great, thanks. Because I'm looking at, I'm on my iPad looking at your presentation. So
Yeah,
if
me too.
this is really good.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just looking to see if it's Lightroom Lite or just Lightroom. Do you have a way to check that? Somebody, Hope, or somebody?
Well, I'm updating mine, and it's taking a time to update it. So I can't get back into it. It's LR is what the icon looks like.
They don't call it Light on the Android. It just shows up as Lightroom.
Okay, all right, enough.
LR, with the big L and the little R.
All right, good. Peggy, where'd you go? What do you need? Peggy, you still there? Dick, Peggy?
They're muted.
They're muted. Hope, can you help?
No, they can unmute themselves too.
Well, they can't hear us right now, so
Okay, let me,
so it's gonna be hard to tell them that.
I'm
Patty,
trying,
I asked-
I'm clicking on participants and not getting anything.
David, hang on one
Debbie?
second. David, if you could hang on a second.
Okay.
We're trying to work on the issue of getting Dick and Peggy back. They're unmuted, you said, Hope?
No, I see them on my screen. They are muted. They show as muted.
Well, maybe they muted, maybe they did it. Okay,
As I said, I have asked them to unmute. I click on the ask to unmute, but they have to unmute themselves.
Maybe
right.
we need to call them.
Yeah, I'll give them a call.
thank you. Okay, David, what you got?
As I'm new to post-processing in the digital world, at least, you said Lightroom, and I see your you know, organizing the pictures, the filing that you had.
Yes.
Does that leave the photos on the same drive or put them in a different place? Or do you know how it handles the photos once you've cataloged them?
I'm not the best one to speak to that, David.
Okay.
You can look that up. The actual photo, I'm not the best one to speak to that. Oh, you're back, Dick. Good.
Eddie?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, well, we can't hear a word, so we're even thinking about leaving because we can't hear a word.
Eddie?
Jerry, just 1 second. They lost their audio. You called them, Hope, right? And they can't turn it on again?
They're going to reboot because in fact, they can't hear a thing.
Oh,
All right, we'll let them do that. Jerry, I can't see you, but what you got?
All right, well, to answer the gentleman's question, and this was a question I had, and I've been studying Lightroom extensively here lately, the improvements. The photo files do not get moved off of the location where you put them in the computer, and that will screw Lightroom up if you do. Once Lightroom knows, it's like a library. If they're on the shelf and the card catalog says they're there, that's where Lightroom knows they're there. So it's very simple. I was always afraid of it, but now I've got religion and I'm finding it's good. Just out of curiosity, if on your sandpaper, if you go over to the basic pad and go down to let me my eyes on this thing, tone, you have a word auto.
Right. I don't use
What
that.
happens if you click on that?
I don't use that. I'm giving it.
Try it one time, because I've learned that Adobe Sensei is using auto, and you'll be amazed.
Okay. I will do one because of your specific request, Jerry, and I'm going to not do that today for the rest of the time.
Okay.
It's the distinction I'm making between give you an honest, straightforward, here's how I do it, and here's the results, and here's what Lightroom does. They're very different things. Okay, and so, but I want to honor your request.
But what they're doing, what Adobe has done with their Adobe Sensei, which is kind of clever. See,
Okay.
this
Yeah, but I hate that, Jerry. I hate that. Personally.
This is basically looking at everybody in the world that uses Lightroom, sees how they process a similar photograph, and looks at your photograph and says, it would benefit from this adjustment, that adjustment. And if you look at all the sliders, when you click on auto again, everything will go back to what they were before.
Not sure how to undo that.
Well, you should be able just to click auto and turn it off.
Yeah, but it's not working, man. Thanks a bunch.
All right. We'll go back down to reset, down the bottom in the right-hand corner.
I know, but that'll reset everything I did. Okay, hang on.
But anyway, there you are. You brought you warmed it up. You can also do things with white balance, but I'll shut up and get out of here.
All right, not asking you to leave, but listen, let me say, that's why I said at the beginning, you start out with your own assessment of what you want to achieve. What you want to achieve with your photos. This, to me, I'm not at all comfortable with. This would not be a photo that I would produce. This would not be the blue of the water that I had experienced. And it's just, to me, it's overly processed. So for those who love it, fabulous. It's a tool you can use. But you have to sort of start out with your own knowledge of where you want to go. I think what you're referring to is the artificial intelligence piece. It's a philosophy. All the production philosophy is, do you want to be able to make decisions about your photos, or do you want to leave it to the computer, essentially?
I do agree that if you listen to that philosophy, it's saying, we'll make all your photos average.
Well, okay. So I want to back off of this. I tried to head it off, but I wasn't at all successful. I want to back off of what a presentation of what Lightroom can do to what Betty Caldwell does. Again, I'm aware there are people here who have never worked with it at all. I don't want to get into deeper waters. All right, so Dick, you guys are hearing me now? Dick and Peggy, you can hear?
Yes,
Welcome back. Good.
thank you.
All right, so we're going to move ahead to something that has come up in our group before. And this is an old house that I was taking when I was doing a series on farms in the rural area in Washington County. Anybody want to guess what we're going to deal with here?
Keystoning.
Say that in regular English.
Oh, the slope of the walls on the left and the right side.
Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so we have sort of a collapse going on here, a leaning to the right. And what we have in Lightroom is a tool. If you go down to transform, it's called the area called transform, allows you to straighten up lines without moving the rest of the picture around. So let's take a look. So we have a vertical line here. Yes, I'm going to choose vertical, and I'm just going to move it, give this a nice graph to see what we're doing. So it's pretty much aligned at this point. The idea is you choose one line, that it's an obvious line, and work with that.
That is amazing to me, because the feeling I got when you manipulated it was just like I was tilting the paper in the enlarger in the old days.
It's a stunning piece of work, I think. It has many, many uses. It's very specific, great for buildings, trees, and you'll notice pictures with all kinds of things leaning. Go through the travel section. It'll drive you nuts, right? So here's your tool for that.
That is amazing to me.
And that's cool, isn't it? All right. So, and this one I wanted a little more pop, a little more drama in this. I took the exposure down a little bit more. And highlights. This was late afternoon sun. All of this was sun behind it.
Mm.
So dealing with highlights, we're there at -22. Shadows, I just played with a little bit. Let me back up. I played with it to see, do I want to be able to see what's behind the windows? And I didn't. I didn't want to. Once I could see them, it's just like, no, you don't want it totally black. You don't need to see what's in there, really. It doesn't add anything to it. So I minimize the shadow. The whites weren't as white as what I was experiencing. So there's a slider specifically for whites. This is at +35, which brings up the whites a little bit more. The black is at +15. This I'm not really going to go into. This is a texture that I worked with something that's not part of Lightroom, but I needed to kind of mask the brilliance of the sun. And I also wanted to play up that it's an old structure. So I added something that adds kind of a historic feel for it. let me go back down to transform just a minute. Let's see what we have. There we go. So that's a pretty good representation of the way you're going to see the house when you're there. Questions or comments about that?
I thought the point of the photograph was to show the house as it appeared. And now you've straightened up some lines that make it look less like it's going to tumble down.
Thank you, Rosemary. Great question. In truth, the human eye, when I was standing there in front of it, it doesn't have that leaning look.
Aha.
It doesn't. It's an architectural thing. Keystoning is.
Entasis.
Pardon me?
It's called entasis. The columns on the Greek buildings are taller at the ends, so they look straight.
Okay.
Because of the eye.
Okay, thank you. So the point is to capture it as it looks to the human eye,
okay,
which turns out not to be that easy, but that's what we're all going for. It's worth checking while you're standing there with your phone to see what you got when you're doing buildings. I'm going to put that back a little bit. Just turn that. Stop. Questions about this? All right. Let me see what I did up here. Right, and I had sharpened it a tad. My favorite sharpener is to use dehaze. Clarity actually adds black. That's what it does. So when you use the clarity slider, you're adding black. So I think of folks I've spoken to who have some handshake going on, or just for whatever can't quite, or their camera's not quite doing what they want it to for whatever reason. You can add a lot of clarity, a lot of sharpness, a lot of better focus to your photos in post-processing.
Can you use dehaze?
Dehaze.
Okay.
Dehaze, yes.
The other question I have is, and it probably goes back to the sandpiper more than it here, but when you wanted to sharpen his eye, did you put the little magnifying glass on his eye so it didn't do anything else but his eye? That was interesting to me, because that seemed to be the only thing that changed.
I know, but you don't need to do that with Lightroom. You don't need it to be that, you don't need the little magnifying glass. Lightroom is known to be easy to work with and also intimidating. So a lot of people are scared of it. I was to start with. But once you get started with it, it's really fun and pretty easy. Like all you do is moving sliders. The other wonderful thing about this is you don't destroy the original. So you can go back 5 or 10 years later to your favorite grizzly bear picture, which you never quite got sharp enough. And you can go back, you can use the updated technology and transform your photos. So the originals you can always work with. John, you got something on this? You look like you got something to say.
Just going to say, there is, for those who are interested in sort of getting more advanced with Lightroom, there is in fact a control up there. You can't see my pointer, so I can't point there, but in that same row of control buttons, there's a little circle. And that circle actually allows you, for example, to look at just an eye and just sharpen or mess with the exposure, whatever, on the eye. But that's sort of if you want to go beyond the basics.
Right, right. So you can, but you don't need to. Right, and particularly when you're just getting started. Right? Keep it simple. Peggy, what do you think of this? You with me? Peggy is not there. They fooled me. All right. Thought I was looking at Peggy, but I'm not. Okay. All right, let's go to the next. Photo.
Mm.
You like that?
Yeah.
I did too. Right, I always did. I was doing a video essay on the family-owned farms out in Washington County, and I spent many days out there. I had a wonderful time, mostly driving around areas I'd never been to before. So I kept discovering things, and every time I passed this, I loved it until I really stopped and looked at it and thought, no, that's not going to do it. So eventually I went ahead and took the picture anyway and thought, well, let's see what I can do with it. Give me a sec. Okay, so again, the first thing for me is to take care of any cropping so I know what picture I'm actually working with. For me, this foundation I didn't want that in the picture. Simplest way to say it. I just wanted the barn. So cropping was in order and pretty simple. It's right up to the base. So let's try that, see what that looks like. Oh, okay. It's not obviously missing. It doesn't tilt over. So I thought, okay, well, let's work with that. The whiteness, the color, I think is off as we see it now. So I'm going to work with highlights and bring those down. Also get more depth in it. I really like the texture that shows up where the paint is kind of worn off. That's kind of the oldness. So work with that. Shadows, let's see what happens if we play with the shadows a little bit. We're taking them away. I think we're going to leave those right there. Again, the darkness. The cropping, let me go ahead and take some of this down. It's too bright and it doesn't add anything to the photo.
So when you crop, does it change the ratio?
It does. Good question. So it's time to pay attention to the ratio. And let's try 8.5 by 11. That's not going to do it.
Nope.
Let's try 16 by 9. Possibly. Let's try that. Front looks a little cropped up a little too much. There we go. Let's just see that edge. So for me, I wanted more drama, more intensity. So I'm going to use dehaze again to kind of go in there and bring it up. It also, interestingly, brings up the sign, which I think is part of the fun. Texture is always worth a little play to see what that does. And in this case, it gives it more of a three-dimensional effect. Then we've got this going on over here. Let's just see what happens if we go to transform.
You're fixing the barn.
I know there were guys with a tractor doing that actually. Okay, a little bit more. It's really, to me, it's quite weird. And there you go.
Betty, if you do all this, can you enter this picture into competition the way you
Absolutely. 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 In fact, I haven't been a part of a competition. Well, I don't usually compete, but I do exhibit. It's assumed that you have done this.
Okay.
It's assumed.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the statement that I usually hear is post-processing is neither encouraged nor prohibited.
Ah,
So there you go.
I have one question.
Sure.
Over on the right, the corner of the roof is sort of cut off. Is that?
It is. Let's see. Did I cut it off? I might have.
Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Thank you. It helps if you have 5 or 6 eyes, I found. One to watch the top, one to watch the bottom, one to watch your cropping. But I don't. So thank you, Vic. Okay, we will go back to crop. Vignetting. Do you know about vignetting?
No.
All right, let me show you.
This is a pretty white spot.
And that is, you're going to bring either white or black to the corners, or as far in as you want. Take it to the right, watch the corners, notice what happens. This is adding a white vignette.
No.
Oh.
And you see this with some old photos, or some old family photos. It's a thing. It was a style, yeah. Don't see that much now, but if you want to, the point is to bring the eye to what's important about the photo, the center. That's the point about vignetting. If you can do it so that people aren't really aware of it, watch it darkening a bit, but it's not obvious. It helps with that too bright sky as well, and it helps bring your eye right into the center.
Betty, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I just watched a movie. I can't remember what it was. It was on, one of the cableless channels, and it was like an antique type movie shot recently, and they vignetted the entire movie. And the artistic reason was to draw your attention to the center of the movie.
Interesting. Did they use a dark vignette or the light, David?
They just sort of made it fuzzy, like what people do in wedding photography with that
Okay.
cheesecloth or something.
Okay. I have friends who pretty much win everything they enter. And part of their secret they shared with me is they always vignette. And it's always pretty much something you won't notice. And so it helps bring your eye in, but it's not a feature that people are going to go, oh, it's nice to have dark corners.
Less is more.
I'm right with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any more questions, or shall we do the osprey?
Ooh.
Osprey it is.
Good. Oh,
Okay, so here I am at Blackwater. And
Where's that?
Blackwater is on the Eastern Shore, Cambridge, Maryland,
Okay.
across from the Harriet Tubman Museum, if you know
Okay.
that.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful national wildlife refuge. So, and after the middle of March, you can count on there being osprey there. so I went off, among other things, to capture some of the osprey. So there's this. They also have, what do they call it? Platforms, I guess. So there are particular points you can go to that are not very far off the paved path, and you can go see the osprey. It's really nice for photography. Now, the light was not good that day, but nonetheless, I was there and they were there. So again, I'm kind of showing you the process of what decision am I going to make? So that was kind of good. I was actually kind of happy with it, except they're not looking at me. They're not looking at each other. They got their backs kind of turned, looked like they had a little spat. It was not that exciting. So it was like, well, how about this one?
Ooh.
Yeah, I was more excited about that. Like, oh, nice fish. It was like, what else could I do? Because I really wanted to be able to see the face of both of them. So I just sat back and watched for a while and realized what their process was, how long between fishing expeditions, what direction the fishermen would come from, and where mom would usually be when dad was bringing in the fish. That was helpful instead of just sort of anxiously trying not to miss the shot. So eventually,
Ah,
Oh, look at their faces. Wow.
the
Great.
eyes are amazing.
so I loved this. I didn't love the totality of it, technically, but I got what I wanted. You see the eyes, you can see what's left of the fish. It's up close, and it really is something I could work with. So I started out, but it's too bright, and I was shooting kind of into the brightness. So let's go to dehaze. And sorry, look at my notes. All right, so now we've got brighter eyes, right? We can see the beak a little more clearly. We can see the details. Let's try shadows. And what we're doing is we're taking down the shadows. Notice it's going to show up here in the nest. You can begin to see what's going on in there. You can begin to see their features a little better. So that's at -9. I'm going to take it up to 27. Exposure on this one really is, it is way overexposed. So it's one of the times that I'm actually going to work with exposure. Just a little bit. Bring it down. Temperature is not something I would nearly deal with, but it's worth taking a look at to see if we move that down just a little bit to -6. Now we've got more blue here. Now we can see what's going on with the nest. And the only other thing I played with was, did we want to see more of the fish or not? So you can work with individual colors. Took the red up just a tad.
It looks like a pomegranate.
It does.
It does, yes.
It ain't.
Did we change the angle? Because when we first started, I thought that the male was looking right at you. Now he's sort of looking somewhere else.
Nope, didn't change
Okay.
that. Did not change that. Just in terms of the story, I've had many people say, oh, how cool is that? Dad goes out and brings fish back to mom. I thought that was going to happen too. However, as it turns out, Dad went out, got the fish, and ate it while Mom got to watch.
So typical.
Sounds very Asian.
Were there ever any chicks that you saw?
Not when I was there.
Uh-huh.
Not when I was there. I was there pretty early on, I think in March, when they had just arrived back.
Yeah, she looks like she's sitting on them, fluffy.
Well, we make up our stories. I don't know. I don't honestly know.
Does he ever come and bring her food? Or does she get leftovers?
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I only will tell you what I saw. Otherwise, I know I'm making up a story. I'm making up a story. I didn't see that happen.
Okay.
But we all think that's what happens. I don't know, but I didn't see it. I think there's a little tiny bit too much white. Just take it down a tad. All right, that's where I stop. Questions or comment on this?
Well, that's a great picture. I mean, this whole, all 4 pictures giving us ideas, telling us about the program. Every time I listen in, I always learn something new from you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether I use it or not, it's another story, but it's interesting.
Whether or not you can use it is another story.
I said, whether I use it or not, I find it fascinating.
Okay. Well, yeah, Janet, what do you got?
I was just saying, as a beginner, thank you very much. It's been very helpful to me. But I think I probably need some one-on-one tutorial with you eventually.
Well, I'd be happy to help you to the extent I can. Also, this is something I study off and on pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sources. There's some wonderful YouTube videos out there. There are particular people that teach this that I think are very good. My point was simply to give you a sense of the possible beyond what you're capturing right now. With your, just to know.
Question, Betty.
Yeah.
I took a picture of 2 rainbows over Herbert's Run building.
You did, yes.
Would doing any of this enhance it so you could see the second rainbow better?
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Worth playing with. And you have it on your iPad, right? We discovered the Lightroom app. Play with it. See what happens. There's no downside to playing with.
Yeah, my trouble is, do I want to play with that or do I want to paint? So I.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Can't help you with that one. Cannot help you with that one.
Thanks, Betty. I need to go, but thank you very much.
Okay, Janet, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
We're going to wrap up in just a minute or two. Hope you can stop recording now, if you will.